STEPS Program Module 2. This brief module will describe the history and the results of a pilot program that took place in Kanawha County Schools. The STEPS program is an evolution from Steps Up to Speech, which was introduced in 2012 and documented through all the guidance documents, to now, which is a broader program with an acronym that represents what it does. It's speech therapy, education, and prevention for success. The STEPS program began in Kanawha County Schools as the direct result of the Special Education Director, Sandra Boggs, requesting that Step Up to Speech be implemented in the county. A program was developed and piloted in 2012. The team that developed the program then presented the pilot program to all the SLPs in May 2012. And then the STEPS program was implemented in the county from 2012-2013, that school year. Data was maintained throughout the year, and an opinion questionnaire survey was completed at the end of 2013. Participants were asked open-ended questions like, what do you consider to be the benefit of STEPS? They responded with statements like, some students may not need to be placed in speech therapy later. Less paperwork is required before students can be helped. Makeup time is not required. More students can be served. Students receive services earlier than the traditional guidelines dictate. Teachers and parents receive timely preventative information. Parents may be more receptive to receiving help because their child is not labeled as being in special education. Teachers feel they are part of the team and that their opinions are respected. Students with mild articulation disorders are not referred to special education, but still receive intervention. Students who really need the help can be the focus of the SLP's attention. The Kanawha County Schools STEPS program targeted students with mild articulation errors, generally those with one or two errors which were developmental. The sounds targeted by the county in order of prevalence were S and S blends, TH, L, R and R blends, K and G, F and V, and Ch and J. In the pilot phase, there were students identified as progressing, but the number of students who mastered their sounds and the number referred were also significant. After the first year, most of the students in the program were progressing. Some mastered the program and only a few were referred. In other words, the speech-language pathologists got better at determining the best candidates for the STEPS program. During the development and implementation of the pilot program, several concerns arose. Those myths or concerns were addressed as they came up. Remember, at that time, educational relevance was not being emphasized, so Kanawha County was not doing the STEPS program to serve students who would not be served through an IEP. They were trying to work smarter, reducing paperwork and time involved in meetings, and yet serving the students in need. Students who were not progressing were referred. Professional judgment dictated referrals. Having been soured on RTI by having to wait on referrals until a certain number of sessions or reading interventions had taken place, they did not want the same thing to happen for speech. Again, professional judgment was key. There were fears about working our way out of a job or being assigned more schools because caseloads were smaller. The therapists were reassured by the special education director that the STEPS program students would be considered when schools were assigned. Most therapists only served an average of 4 to 5 STEPS students. The Kanawha County STEPS program was in essence Steps Up to Speech. It was a pre-referral intervention program for students identified as having mild developmental articulation disorders with only 1 or 2 speech sound errors. The idea was to help the identified students prior to referral and perhaps eliminate the need for a referral and unnecessary paperwork and time involved in meetings. In time, the educational relevance of speech-language disorders was emphasized, and the Steps Up component included information about not excluding students from special education whose communication disability impacted educational performance. In other words, the STEPS program could not be used to deny students from receiving special education services. In the pilot program, Step 1 consisted of identifying the students and providing information or packets to the parents and sometimes teachers, and periodically the student was observed by the SLP to determine whether progress was being made. In Step 2, the speech-language pathologist worked directly with the student and made monthly decisions about next steps based on data. And the final step was referral. Speech-language pathologists reported that the data obtained from working with the student in the STEPS program was helpful as part of the evaluation process and in writing the IEP. This is an example of the decision-making process if the student is in Step 1. If the student is doing well in Step 1 with homework packets and consultations, then Step 1 was continued. Or they were moved to Step 2 where they received the direct services. Perhaps they even mastered the skill and they were dismissed. The original STEPS was very linear. One step led to another, and the final step was referral if necessary. As the multi-tiered system of supports, or MTSS, replaced RTI in the general education world, there was a brief time when STEPS was redesigned to match the 4 tiers in MTSS. The STEPS Tier 1 consisted of whole class instruction, or providing information to teachers to help all the students or many of the students, introducing strategies to groups of parents at parent-teacher conferences, and participation in SATs or teacher collaboration meetings. In other words, the speech-language pathologist was attempting to help many students. As you can see, there are many opportunities to educate parents and teachers before even identifying a specific student. Tier 2 was targeted instruction. In this tier, the speech-language pathologist identified certain students and worked with the parents and teachers specifically, providing practice packets and monitoring the student. During intensive intervention, or Tier 3, the speech-language pathologist worked directly with the student and periodically assessed their progress. In Tier 4, the speech-language pathologist initiated a referral for special education. Do you see that basically we added one step, Tier 1, the general education initiative, to the steps that we already had? Probably the most valuable addition to the STEPS program was Steps Down from speech therapy. Many speech-language pathologists found that aspect of STEPS very helpful in this transition from speech therapy with an IEP. Parents and teachers felt better about dismissal because the speech-language pathologist was going to continue to monitor the student after dismissal and provide tune-ups as needed. Steps Down recognized that generalization of speech-language skills did not require specially designed instruction and hence special education. The STEPS MTSS was dropped rather quickly because it was confusing people. There were 2 versions of MTSS, the big general education MTSS, and then there was a speech MTSS. So the STEPS program went back to steps rather than tiers, and it included 2 sections: Steps Up, with its cycle of 3 steps, and Steps Down, with its cycle of steps. But we listened and we heard you loud and clear. This was too much. It was too confusing, too organized, too regimented. Finally, STEPS was simplified. No step up and step down. It was all one program. Success was defined in different ways. Mastery of the skill through the provision of education and prevention activities, the old STEPS up, or generalization of skills acquired through the special education service upon dismissal by providing indirect services and periodic tune-ups, the STEPS down. All activities are combined, allowing the flexibility for the speech-language pathologist to individualize services based on student data and professional judgment. As you can see, a key component of the STEPS program is the review and monitoring. It has to be data-driven. But the ultimate goal for the education, the prevention, and the periodic reviews is success.